Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Corrective Services Technology and Research Development Information and Question Session. Thank you to all who have joined. My name is Renee Van Arken. I'm the Acting Director for the Reducing Recidivism Program Management Office. And in the room here with me today, I have Deputy Commissioner Luke Grant, I have Rohan Lalham and Kevin Bradley, and I have Lance from our corporate research area. And this morning, I'm sorry you don't have any vision because we're having a few technical issues here, but if everyone can hear us very well, it would be great if you could let us know. That would be fantastic. Using the emoticons there, that would be very good. Just waiting to see if everyone can hear me.
And see your slides.
Yeah. If everybody can see our slides, and maybe we'll type a little, if you could type a little question in, that would be fantastic, and just let us know that we have you all out there and we can communicate with you, and we will get started. Okay, I'm going to assume that everybody can hear me, but if you want to let me know in the chat function that you can hear me, that would be fantastic. But so I might just also do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, and to let you know that this session will be recorded for future. We might be using it for some training later on. You will have the ability to ask questions, and if you can ask questions using the chat function, that would be fantastic. Yay, someone has written in to say you can hear us and you can see the slide. Fantastic news. Thank you so much. All the questions that are asked will be published, and if you have any question that remains unanswered, please let us know. And if you also can like any of the questions that are being published so that we can prioritise which questions that we'd like to address first while we've got this Q&A, and we will try and address all questions by the end of our presentation. Before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're calling in from today. We're here in Haymarket, which is the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people present today on the line. Today, we're going to do a little bit of background on our research and development strategy, and then we're actually going to speak about our EOI process that we've published online, and then open up the floor for questions from you around our EOI process and also our R&D strategy. But to kick us off this morning, I'm going to hand over now to our Deputy Commissioner, Luke Grant, who can talk a little bit about the history of this project and about this strategy.
If you just bear with me for a second, I want to put a few slides up as well. That's one going. So just the one that was 9:59, the last one on the bottom. I thought I should give you, and maybe I might stand here so I can progress the slide when it comes up. Apologies, everyone. It's late. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a bit of a context. Is that up yet on screen? No, not yet. Oh, sorry. Discussion. We're still here, everyone. Sorry. The silence doesn't mean anything other than being perplexed by the technology. Let's see how we go. Okay, thanks very much for doing that. So I just wanted to give you a bit of background to this project because it hasn't come out of nowhere. It's something we've been working on for quite a long time, and most recently, Corrective Services has been challenged, by the government and during the time of the coalition to have a positive impact on reoffending. We had a target to reduce reoffending by 5%, and that gave us a bit of an opportunity and an impetus to change and to do things differently. So one of the areas that we decided to focus on, because we've had a lot of emphasis over decades on psychologically based programs and a particular model of change that was based around the Canadian risk, needs and responsivity model, which largely sort of identified people's deficits, and high risk people got a lot of treatment and low risk people got nothing. And we realised that we needed, given that our efforts to actually impact on reoffending seemed to be hampered by how narrowly we looked at the solutions that we were applying, we decided to take a broader view about the things that we need to change to get better outcomes for that the state government was pursuing with us and making it our highest priority. So one of the areas we decided to look at was what benefits we could get from digital services and providing things digitally. And whilst this is not a novelty in the community in almost any context, in prisons it's actually a very new thing. And prisoners spend the majority of their time, very sadly, in their cells in Australia, not alone in New South Wales. On average, say in our maximum security jails, people are spending at least 16 hours in their cells, and that's a time when they have a cellmate, they've a television, if they're lucky, a toilet, and very little stimulation and very little opportunity to have any control over their existence. And it's a really difficult experience for people to endure, but it's also a highly unproductive experience to have people in their cell in that space. So we started to wonder about the type of things we could bring to the cell. It wasn't a new idea of looking at digital things. We'd already started doing things like using AVL for court attendances. We have a network of computers for prisoners that they can access during the day from their education spaces. And they've had free-to-air television for a long time. We've had radios and CD players and things. And we started to play around with things like offender kiosks, which would give people information about that they own themselves, their own information. How much money do I have in my account? And so on. We tried to give people access to legal information via a legal information portal and a variety of other things. So it wasn't we were doing nothing, but none of this was taking place in the cell. And the very limited amount of time that was available on the day out of cells was being taken up by a whole range of other activities. So we developed in about 2016, 2017, a vision for where we might like to go to. And that was the idea of having an innovative, secure, and integrated digital solution that allow us to transform the offender environment and reduce reoffending. And the things we thought we might be able to achieve by that were the promotion of personal autonomy and responsibility. Ironically, people who are in jail often can be people who have failed to take responsibility or are slightly out of control, living chaotic lives, and we put them in an environment in jail where then they can't make mistakes and they can't learn as well as they might, because the prison environment is so constrained and they lose all sense of control and sense of autonomy and agency. So we thought that we could actually improve that by giving people access to their own information and control over some of the activities and functions they might like to do. We also thought it was an opportunity to provide an extended time frame over which programs and services could be delivered in a different format during the in-cell period. And very importantly, we wanted to improve opportunities for people to have contact with their families, and having contact with families and pro-social contact with friends is such an important element of opportunities for improvement. And in prisons, until we put these tablets into play, prisoners were fairly restricted in the times that they could contact their families. They'd go to work, the majority of people, there'd be some telephones available in the workplace, but largely when they came back from work or on the weekends, they'd queue up with other people with a wall-mounted analog telephone. And it was often at the time that their families weren't available, when kids were at school or people, if they did have a job or at work or just were out and about and weren't in the home. If you could only call people, say, before 3:30, then it meant you were losing an enormous amount of opportunity for contact. So we created an idea to increase the availability of contact with families by putting telephones into the cells. And this is part of the solution we've rolled out. We also wanted people to constructively use their time. And one of the things that's just not just in-cell time, but developing other things you could do when you weren't in your cells, but building practice and encouraging people to do things. And we also wanted to try to improve the relationships we have between staff and with prisoners in particular. And there's a lot of information around about the importance of sort of building a sense of legitimacy amongst people who are in custody. You know, the role of custodial officers and prisoners, very distinct sort of functions, and there's a lot of frustration that occurs between both prison officers who are working in an environment where they've got pretty limited resources and they have a lot of manual processes and repetitive processes that they do. So one of our thoughts here was if we could actually liberate them from some of the more routine transactional work they do and replace that where possible with a digital solution, then it would free them up to have a more quality interaction with prisoners, which was really, really important thing I think we thought to do. So this vision that we had was sort of mapped out, and we were significantly aided by COVID, surprisingly enough. Not everything came from COVID, not everything came from this bad, as we've heard said in so many contexts. But during COVID, we took the step, which people criticised us for, to stop having access to prisoners from external people, whether they external program providers, service providers, lawyers, and family members were not allowed to come and visit people in jail. So we had to set up an alternative mechanism for contact, and we put in place a digital solution that was really highly effective and very well received by the users at all ends. So we had families who appreciated maintaining contact, the difference that happens when you actually bring a digital device into your home. So you've got a prisoner, rather than just seeing you in the very unusual circumstances of a visiting space in jail, being taken into your bedroom or the place where the children have been doing some artwork, or to see your family pet, or to walk out into your garden, to just be connected to your family in a very different way. It was very effective, and we had a lot of excitement about what we were doing. In fact, we've now had about 600,000 visits undertaken in that format. And the Premier at the time, Gladys Berejiklian, was very enthusiastic about it and encouraged us to roll this out faster. And on the back of that, we were successful in being able to tap into the government's Digital Restart Fund, which gave us, more than $40 million to invest in rolling out digital solutions across the board. So that was a very exciting thing for us. So we have this clear set of objectives. We wanted to improve constructive in-cell time, enhance program effectiveness, improve the experience, allow prisoners to have more responsibility for themselves and have efficiencies. All of those things we wrapped up into a package to convince the government to give us this money. And we do have responsibilities to try and understand what we are actually achieving through this. We've described it as a transformative activity. It's one of many parts of a very complicated program we've got in place to try and improve reoffending outcomes. So we're really interested in, does this have any reoffending benefits? But more than that, what are the personal benefits to prisoners? What happens with staff? There are so many aspects to this. I'm not going to go through these details. We went through a mapping exercise where we looked at nearly all of these sort of challenges that we have and recognised that there was a potential for digital technology to contribute to all of this. And there are risks associated with it as well. There are ethical issues around with the way we use technology. There's some people might think are insidious techniques that are available to us now. There's a lot of paranoia about giving prisoners who are notionally sort of restricted in their liberty access to a wide range of people and services and so on in the community, and that there are digital tools that are able to interrogate the nature of those interactions and to right down to being able to measure mood fluctuation in the voice of someone when they're having a telephone conversation. So technology has all of these protections in it, but there are ethical issues that arise from the way we use it, the way we store information that we need to understand. So effectively, I'm just going to wrap up this part because I've been talking for too long. Renee probably didn't want me to rave away like this for such a long time. But essentially, we have this situation where prisoners need to access a whole range of services, a limited amount of time during which they can do it during the day. As I mentioned, if they're lucky, they'll have 8 hours out of cell, on average across the board, but in some circumstances, much less. And every single transaction, every type of relation bit of activity they have to do up until this recent point in time, they've had to fit into this limited amount of time. So we've now provided these tablets, and Renee can give you an update in due course about how many we've rolled out now, but we're over 9,000, is that right? Tablets have now rolled out.
Yes.
In the system. We've got money, still some money to roll out more of them for between now and the end of this financial year. And in the end of that, we'll have nearly every prison covered, not all prisons, nearly all prisons covered. And what that will do is provide this platform that enables people to engage in a whole range of transitions, transactions, activities, and things that will just basically change their life in prison. And that's effectively what this research program is about. We were wondering how we'd actually go about doing this work. We had a discussion around a sort of a program logic, what are the inputs and the outputs and what are we expecting to see as the outcomes? And we realised that we needed to actually approach this in a different way to how we'd approached things before. And so we engaged UTS, and at that time Rowan was at UTS, Kevin and others, to do some thinking and to speak to others, because it was very much a consultative, collaborative process to develop a framework within which we could undertake some research. And we also recognised that we wanted to have some partners. There's a lot of interest in this space, and some of the vendors were very interested in being involved. Some of the vendors were interested in putting money on the table, and had already approached universities to become involved with trying to undertake evaluations around this very exciting piece of work we were doing. And we wanted to sort of take a step back from that and say, what is our framework under which we'd be doing this? What are the things that are most important to us? We want this to be as big and as complex as possible. And then what are some of the mechanisms that we could use for engaging with our colleagues in the research fraternity to work on projects of mutual interest, and how we could seed, fund those, and a variety of things. So today's meeting is sort of the beginning of this process, having a conversation with you all about where we want to go with this. And I'd prefer to hand over actually to Renee and Rowan and others to talk a little about the framework, and then we're going to move on to talk about the mechanism.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you so much for that. We can also make some of these slides available if you'd like some more information, and some are also available in the strategy that's been posted online with the expression of interest. And so we're just going to switch over our slide deck now, but in the meantime, while we're doing that, we just, as Luke said, and to further his conversation around the development of this research and development strategy, the intentions were to undertake our internal research as well as commission external research that would really support that collaborative framework that Luke was just talking about, which would translate and communicate what our research outcomes were going to be in this space. And so to further talk about that, I might hand over to Rohan and Kevin just to explain a little bit about the design of that approach in the strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. So with the strategy, yeah, it was a really sort of interesting project to be involved in, and looking at what could be or should be research and development sort of in this space, and a framework for that. One sort of point to, I think, make at the outset is that it was very much sort of embedded in a desistance model of rehabilitation, and one that sees there's a model within the strategy of sort of primary, secondary, tertiary, and where we're trying to engage people, provide an environment, but also opportunities that support their choices to change. That includes psychological programs, and it also includes a number of education, contact with family, contact with services. So it's quite a broad framework that's in the strategy. This is, it's also worth noting that New South Wales have been particularly ambitious in this space. And by that I mean, particularly previous to the pandemic, there'd been a number of sort of applications of digital technology in prisons, but the focus hadn't been around rehabilitation as much as it is in this case. And that's the premise and the basis they want to create treatment on. And so part of that was, to do that, you need the content on these devices, and you need the knowledge and expertise. And the proposal in that document was to harness industry and the university sector to do that. So that's, this is the first step in that. We'll get some, I think the slides are coming up soon, but sorry, we're just having a little bit of issue with the
I'm going to pop everything on mute for a second while we just organise our slide situation so that you know what we're speaking about and not rambling away. To find the appointment because I don't have the attachments. Where are they? Did you email them to me?
You emailed them to me.
I emailed them to you. It's going to be too. Is it just not responding there? Nothing's working.
Apologies everyone for this little technology glitch we're having.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hopefully everybody can now see those slides. And again, apologies for the technical issues. And so I think this is probably about where Rohan was talking about in terms of our strategy around our internal research, our external research, supporting that collaborative framework to actually translate that process into research findings to really inform the future development and also ability to be able to name some of the benefits that we've said in our, as Luke was saying, in our business case for our benefits tracking around the $40 million that we were able to achieve. But further to that, to see whether or not the things that we were doing with our technology were really landing in the space that we wanted them to land. And so in terms of the strategy itself and the way that it was designed, Rohan, if you want to just speak to this slide a little bit.
Yeah, so part of the process of developing the strategy was, scoping out, what are all the domains or areas that projects could be in. And that's, there's always a difficulty in sort of specifying those things. And to say the truth, I think there's 14, so there's quite a few. Within that, there's some priorities that Corrective Services want to so this, sorry.
There we go. There's the 14 priorities.
Sorry, I read that slide differently. Okay, so these are the 14 areas. There's 3 priority areas, and they are education, ethics, and user experience and inclusivity. So education is a key sort of component, and operationalising that is a key objective for Corrective Services. What that project would be working alongside the implementation of that and bringing, expert knowledge to that, bringing evaluation and, drawing on the academic and professional literature out there. The ethics is, that's based on the acknowledgement throughout the department that technology in this space and technology that prisoners will be using, there are a number of ethical issues involved in that, involved in data, involved in what people have access to and what they don't, and how that information is used. And that second project is about exploring all those things, doing research around them, And also, you know, all of these projects are also about delivering a resource or a tool or an application for this. So part of that project would be that. The third one is user experience and inclusivity. So particularly in the area of rehabilitation, but also, you know, more broadly, it's essential that people in prison use these devices and use the applications that, you know, are being designed to assist them to make change. And the key to that is the user experience, and that they get something out of that and are motivated to do it. So that's an important part. Inclusivity, there's, you know, that's also issues around people's ability to use this technology and varying based on people's backgrounds and literacy and that sort of thing. That needs to be looked at. It's starting to get sort of identified in the broader literature. So it's a really interesting project there. Then more broadly, there's the 14 other areas. You'll be able to see those in the strategy document, but there's ones around therapeutic programs. There's ones around people communicating with family and friends. There's ones about external services potentially, and there's ones around art. So there's a lot of different projects there. Hopefully you've had a look at those already, but that's really exciting. The next slide is, okay, so now we'll go through the process. I'll just sort of giving a little bit more context. These projects to a degree can be varying in size. The view was that they are significant projects. Looking at ethics in this space or looking at user experience or education is, you know, there's a lot to look at. So there's a view that a lot of these projects would be 3-year, you know, quite substantial projects. So we just sort of wanted to note that. So with the EOI process, so we've put out the invitation for people to put in applications. There's the form for that, which we'll go through later, is online. When those are submitted, I think the date's the 2nd of June from memory, there'll be a review process, and we've got some criteria against which they'll have be reviewed, and there'll be an internal committee doing that. Those that are selected at that point then would go to another stage where it's discussing and collaborating with Corrective Services about, you know, what this project could be, and looking at the different sort of resources involved and the resources for Corrective Services, funding, that sort of thing. So going through that and really getting the collaboration happening. Out of that, so a key element of this is Corrective Services are saying they'll commit up to 50,000 cash and up to 100,000 in kind for each of these projects. But it is the research team role to then get additional funding on top of that. There are a number of companies and philanthropy and that sort of thing in this space who are willing and really interested in supporting this research. And there's other things, but just to say that. So out of that third stage, what you'd be getting would be Corrective Services would be saying we support and we are in principle partner to go to you. So for you to go out to get other funding, then you would you would go and seek that funding. Once that's happened, then there's the last stage, which is project establishment. So that would involve, there'd be ethics processes within Corrective Services and different responsibilities. So that's the general process of engagement.
got a couple of questions coming through, which is nice. But we'll start publishing them, Rohan, as you work through this EOI process.
Yeah.
And so others, if you do have questions, please write them in the chat and we'll start publishing them as we start moving through. I think the next slide is an example of an EOI form just as a visual. We clearly know that you're not able to see something so small, but it really is just to show you what the completed form process might look like. And then if we now just move through to going through the assessment criteria of the EOI form, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so there's this, this builds on 2022 ARC linkage criteria. This is basically an adaptation of that. And there's 4 basic areas. We'll do, in terms of, we'll mark different applications based on this, just to create a bit of a gauge, and particularly if we have multiple teams wanting to do research in particular areas. But the first is investigator capability and the team capability. Important in that is the ability to do collaborative research with, in this case, corrective services, but also industry could be involved. Experience in research methods. So we are sort of pushing people a little bit to an action research style approach. There can be sort of fundamental research at the start, but then sort of developing knowledge and tools in that space. So there's some key things about investigator and that the team. The next one is project quality and innovation. This form's also available on the website, so we probably don't need to go through in a whole lot of details, but we do want people to be ambitious and innovative in these. They're large projects. It's a big opportunity, so do be innovative. Then the next one is feasibility and commitment. So around that, I suppose that it is something that can be delivered within the resources and time frame is an important thing. A good thing in this, is to agree like commitment and say for ARC or these other funding organisations, what they really want to know is that the partner is committed. And in this case, you have got a committed partner. They are saying, they're committed to supporting you doing this, and they want, they're invested in this. So, but vice versa, we would, we want teams or corrections wants teams that are committed in this area, because they would like to build expertise within, the university sector around, to support them in this work. And then the last one, so is around benefit, and that there is a real a benefit here for, I think you do the New South Wales government thing, putting sort of prisoners and the community at the centre of this, so that you're benefiting, you're supporting assistance, supporting people's choices in that, and that could be at different levels. There's different levels of logic there, but that you do need to articulate that really clearly.
Thank you, Rohan. That's fantastic, and notwithstanding all of our technical issues here today, that's a really brief overview of the things that are available online in the EOI post that we've put out. And just before we do straight away move into these Q&A sections, I might just in the room double check that no one here has anything more that they'd like to say. So from Crez, is there anything that you want to add about this process in terms of what we'd like these people to know about our strategy?
Not really. The only thing I guess I'll add is we've had this discussion among the group is while we have those criteria there, we're also, you know, very open. We don't want things to be too prescriptive or people to think that you know, their project might not fit. So please, this is really just this first stage of the process gauging you know, what might be suitable. So please also feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions after the event today about your specific project.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
a great point.
Good point. With the EOI, it is, you know, it's sort of exactly, we want to gauge interest and quality. You know, within the scope of that document, you probably can't meet all of those criteria, but give us a sense of what you're thinking, where you're going, and yeah, that would be really valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Mark from CRES on the line, is there anything you'd like to add to the process before we open it up to the Q&A?
I think it's all very well covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, well, we've started publishing some of the questions, and so I'm not sure if everyone can see them, but I might just read some of them out. So the first one we have on there is standard guidelines for corrections in Australia with an emphasis on guidelines. Does New South Wales Corrections have a set of education standards in corrections that should be referenced? Luke, you probably know if there's education standards.
I mean, there's certainly high-level standards that are attached to sort of our contract and performance regime that apply across the board, but I don't know actually if we have a set of standalone standards for education. There's a lot of detail in them, so I have to follow up on that and get back here.
What we definitely know that we have in this learning management system space is that we are building a purpose-built learning management system that, in terms of the benefits of this digital reform program that we're implementing in corrections, is that we're actually wanting to encourage a blended learning opportunity for people in custody to be able to do learning out of cell that's then supported in cell that can contribute to practicing of education and also behaviour standards to be able to really impact their learning outcomes or their behaviour change outcomes. And so we definitely have some documents in terms of our LMS and what it is that we're trying to achieve with our learning management system. We have named it as our top priority because in terms of our benefits, it is the one area that we're really able to maximise what people in custody are doing in cell that actually has a learning outcome. There's lots of things that our technology reform is doing, including providing contact to family, including entertainment and all of those nice, wonderful things. But really for corrections, in terms of being able to name the benefits that we've said to government we want to achieve, the education and learning management space is really, really top of agenda. So we will definitely be able to provide some more information about that. The next question is around the minimum and maximum funding amounts for the projects. Now, I think there is some flexibility in this, but really we're saying 50,000 in terms of the maximums. So does anybody from the research space want to add to that?
Yeah, that's the contribution from Corrective Services, a maximum of 50 plus 100 in kind. Depending on sort of calculations of in kind, it could go up. But that, yeah, so that is it. I suppose then working that out, you know, the view would be a number of these projects would be ARC linkage type style grants where you'd get additional industry funding. So say on top of that, you get another 60,000 cash from industry or 70,000. You can then, you know, and with in kind, there is the potential to be building a project that's, you know, $600,000 or $700,000 with the in kind. So, yeah, that.
Part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of
Yeah.
Part of the EOI process.
Part of the
Then
process.
correct.
We know the project and sort of throughout that environment.
Very good. So the next question here is there an interest in digital mental health in this space? And absolutely there is an interest. And so part of our program actually included an online mental health app or, option for people in custody to use on the in-cell tablets. This has been more challenging than we anticipated, which is exactly why we're very interested in this space. And so how we can maximise opportunities for people in custody to use the tablet technology to improve mental health, both in terms of outcomes and immediacy. So whilst it's not listed as a priority area, if you're interested in that space, we would love to hear from you. So thank you very much, definitely. Next question. It seems possible there'll be multiple submissions on the same research topic. Will there be provision for research teams to collaborate on the development of grant applications? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, there will be. So there's the EOI. We'll get a sense at that point. Yeah, once through the EOI process, it is a collaborative process. If there are multiple teams, and we think it would be, it's viable to get different teams in contact with each other and collaborating. We will do that. It's about supporting university people to get the best project and project teams. So within, if corrections can support that, they will.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's another question around collaborations from other correction departments in other states and potentially even I'm going to add to there internationally. I think this is a really emerging area both in Australia but also in the international space, and I think that any collaborations really would be considered through the EOI process. And certainly seeing what's happening out there internationally would really form part of what we're looking to achieve out of this process ourselves for Corrections New South Wales. Okay, just wondering if there's any other questions, please post them in the chat. And if anyone else in the room has anything they'd like the group to know as we start winding up our Q&A session here.
With that last one, the Sarah ARC linkage, we do see that being Sarah's question there, that ARC linkage would be one mechanism through which to do, looks to be answered, that would happen. It's also to say that Corrective Services, they do have a long-term sort of view on this. They're aware of that they're, getting an ARC linkage up takes some time, but they're committed to doing this over a number of years. So please sort of think of it in that way.
Thank you. Yeah, just to build on that point as well, Rohan, this, as Luke mentioned earlier as well, this program is a 10-year program in terms of, well, it's a long-term investment for corrections overall, but the program of which the government invested into this technology reform for corrections is a 10-year program. And so we're really looking to be able to continue to name our benefits. We're in the early stages. We're only in the first 18 months of this 10-year program. So we're still very much in implementation. We're still very much rolling tablets out to some sites. And so the next phase of this project for corrections is really around building the apps, building the content that's available on the tablets, and really being able to understand how they're being used and how the people in custody are being impacted by what we're providing through this technology reform. We're looking as well, not just for the positives. We'd like to know what the challenges are. We absolutely want to know if what we're doing has the impact that we'd like it to have, and we'd like to know earlier rather than later if it's not, so we're able to really plan our next program of work as well. So it is a long-term investment and a long-term strategy.
I'd like to add maybe something as well, but it's a bit of an aside, and that is for people who are interested in the space, there is a meeting coming up the 23rd to the 25th of May in Adelaide, which is part of the ICPA, the International Corrections and Business Association calendar. So they have a technology focused meeting at the intersection between technology and corrections. It's a big meeting. There'll be a lot of people from overseas, including some academics. It has an emphasis on practitioners and vendors, but for instance, Victoria Knight, I think, is one of the key people in the United Kingdom who's been writing this space, and Stephen Van der Steen, who's collaborates with her, but he works out of France or something like that. He'll be there at that meeting. So for people interested in pursuing their interest in it and want to hear a little bit more about the landscape internationally, what Victoria and has been sort of doing well is really talking about some of the unintended adverse consequences as well of this type of work. You know, what happens if you insert technology anywhere and does, you know, contrary to our best hopes, does that actually dehumanise the system by having people just engaging with machines and not being involved in de-skilling correctional officers and things that you might anticipate could occur as a result of it. So we are really interested in a critical view of the meeting is called the ICPA, the International Corrections and Prisons Association ICPA meeting. If you just put an ICPA Adelaide, there'll be a reference to it. And I think the program has been published as well.
It has,
online. So we've got the ICPA website, the International Corrections and Prisons Association.
And we can post the link also to that, and also to let you know, Rohan and myself, Renee, will be speaking on this strategy at that conference. So there'll be plenty more, not only about this strategy, but as Luke said, a plethora of people interested in this space in terms of.
Maybe answer Stuart's question about whether you go to side meetings. So it's not, it doesn't have to be side meeting. We're part of the program.
So
it'll be one of the workshops. So it's not a plenary session. It's like a separate session.
There's several sessions, but yes, part of the workshop, and we'd be more than happy, Stuart, to connect with you in Adelaide. So please reach out anytime. Rowan and I'll be happy to meet. Yep. Name of the gathering. So that's the ICPA, the International Corrections and Prisons Association Technology Conference that will be in Adelaide. Yeah. Fantastic. To let everybody know, the expression of interest closes on the 2nd of June. So that's online on the website, 2nd of June. Please reach out if you have any questions to the contact. There's a generic email listed in that expression of interest that everybody in this room will have access to. So we'd be more than happy to take any questions between now and then. Does anybody have anything final they'd like to say before we say thanks so much for attending?
I'd just like to add, appreciate everyone's very busy. So if you're aware of any colleagues that were unable to make it today, please feel free to pass on all of this information to them as well.
Thanks, Lance. That's a really good point. Yeah, and this will be recorded, so we'll be able to send the link, embarrassingly, with our technical issues. So please don't judge us on that, but definitely the content is all available. We've posted the website link for the EOI in the chat. So please feel free to have a little bit of a look at that. That has the strategy document within it and the EOI process. Well, without further ado, thank you so much for attending. Again, apologies for our issues over here, but we're very grateful that you joined and look forward to partnering with you into the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.